Hey, thank you for joining me for today's video. I'm Richard Chapo. I am a internet lawyer in San Diego, California, and I've been advising online businesses for about the past 20 plus years. So the subject of today's video is evolution of internet law. Why should you care? Well, if you own a business online or even if you're just online as a consumer, it's important to understand where internet law not only is now, but where it's headed, because it's going to materially affect how the internet functions. So if you're a business, it's going to materially affect things like how you can use your email list or how you can market. And if you're a consumer, it's going to impact maybe things you can see versus things you will be blocked from seeing. That was easy for me to say, but it's going to have a big effect. We are moving into a period of significant change as to how the internet is going to function, and so it is important to make sure you know what's happening so you can plan ahead. So what is internet law? Well, I tell people I'm an internet lawyer, and they always get this kind of interesting look, and they're like, "Wow, that's really fascinating. It must be very interesting." And I always find it kind of humorous because there really is no thing called internet law. If you went to a law library and said, "I would like to read the internet law," they would get a glazed look on their face. There isn't one. What internet law really refers to is a collection of different areas of law that apply to the online arena. So for a website, you may be looking at things like privacy law, copyright, trademark, contract law in relation to the website terms of use, advertising law, FTC guidelines, and things of that sort related to how you market, topics of that sort. And so when we're talking about the evolution of internet law, we're talking about how those standards are applicable to the law in the past, now, and in the future. And in the future is particularly important for you, particularly if you own a business, because things are changing dramatically. And so things you're used to doing with your business are going to change dramatically as well. Now, before we get to the three stages of evolution of internet law, I just want to let you know that if this is a subject that interests you at all, there's a book called How the Internet Happened, From Netscape to the iPhone. It's written by Brian McCullough. It's McCullough. And it goes into this in much more depth, not the internet law, not the internet law side, so much as the actual development of the web. Because the internet is unique as a commercial medium because it evolves so quickly. The difference, think about it, 1998, most of us were on dial-up modems. Flash forward to 2019, and we have companies like Netflix that are massive companies based on streaming video. It's a radical change. Now, it may not seem like it if you grew up in this area, in this era, but if you're an older chap like myself, it's amazing to see how quickly things have changed and will continue to change. And so that's important to get a grasp of. Now, when we talk about the evolution of the internet law, I'm going to run through the first couple stages pretty quickly here. We had the infancy. This is maybe 1995 through 2005. And we had the passage of foundational laws, most of these coming during the end of the Clinton presidency. We had laws like the Communications Decency Act and the Digital Millennium Copyright that were passed. These laws have received some criticism, but keep in mind, they were passed during a period in 1998, again, when most of us were on dial-up. So the areas where you see problems with these laws, it was hard to forecast those because in 1998, quite frankly, copying content and republishing it easily really wasn't all that easy to do from a technological perspective. 20 years later, it's incredibly easy to do. And so, we find some problems with these laws. But nonetheless, this is the passage of foundational laws that really caused the internet to function as we see it today. And it was a very important period. And these laws, certainly tried to apply offline legal concepts to the online world, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse. And then from 2005 on to about 2015, we moved to what I call the teen years. A lot of drama, a lot of complaining, a lot of unhappiness. And that was because we had ran into a period where the internet was evolving so quickly that it had far outraced any legal concepts online. And so you have situations where you had, for instance, Yelp, with Yelp reviews, with the consumer reviews, and people could leave false reviews, and businesses really had no remedy because the Communications Decency Act granted Yelp immunity from being sued for defamation. And a false review is essentially defamation. and there's just no resolution to it. And you had problems with the DMCA and these other areas. A good area to look at would be internet sales tax. We spent 10 years in what were called the Amazon Wars, where Amazon and states sued each other right and left, trying to figure out if Amazon had to collect and remit sales tax for its sales into those states. And the law in that area was all based on brochures and catalogs that were sent in the brick and mortar world in the 1970s. You might remember like the Sears catalog, that kind of thing. Well, did that law really apply to the online environment? And millions of dollars in time and effort was spent trying to figure that out. Some states said yes, some states said no. And the end result is we had confusion and kind of chaos. Did you go ahead and collect or did you not? And for online businesses, it was difficult to ascertain that. Now, when I'm talking about online businesses, I'm not so worried about the big boys. I'm worried about more like the small businesses and startups and groups of that sort. And when you're in one of those businesses, you're looking for something that you can plan for. And in this case, there's a lot of areas that were just kind of left bare. Now we're moving into what I call the adult era. And this is the important part of the video. The previous two eras saw courts and governments very receptive to the idea that internet commercial mediums should be protected and internet businesses should be protected while they grew and evolved. We are now seeing the end of that era. There's no longer much interest in that kind of a concept. And so some of the safe harbors that you would expect online are disappearing. So, for instance, the Supreme Court, they finally weighed in on the sales tax issue. And they've said, ignore all that brochure law. States can, in fact, collect sales tax from internet businesses that are not located in the business or located in the particular state for sales made into that state. So if you are an online business located in California and you sell into South Dakota, well, you have to collect and remit sales tax to South Dakota for those sales. Now, so long as they meet a minimum threshold in South Dakota, it's, I think, $200,000 or 200 sales in a year. So you have to now go to every different state and figure out, what those thresholds are, compare them to your sales, and then determine if you need to collect or remit sales tax. And that's as fun as it sounds. So you're seeing other areas as well. The Americans with Disabilities Act has applied in the real world for many, many years, many decades. And the question has been, does it apply online? And we're seeing an effort by ADA attorneys to argue that it does and to sue websites trying to argue that they need to be compliant with the ADA. And some courts have said yes, and some courts have said no. And so we have a bit of chaos there, and we're expecting the Supreme Court to weigh in on the issue. In the area of privacy law, we have the GDPR coming out in the EU. It's extremely restrictive. Attorneys such as myself thought there was no way we would see anything like that in the US. However, California went ahead and passed the California Consumer Privacy Act. It is also extremely restrictive. And so then the question becomes, well, what's going to happen to the use of data like email lists and all these different areas? And we don't really know. And in fact, other states are also passing their own privacy laws, so we're expecting to see a U.S. national privacy law here at some point in the next year or two, because you have to have it, otherwise it's going to be chaos, and nobody knows what's going to be in that law. But privacy law is going to change significantly, and this may affect everything from Facebook advertising, the data that you can look at, to how you can use your email list, to whether email addresses in your list can be used permanently, or if the consent that person provided when they signed up for your newsletter list only lasts a certain period of time, maybe 3 years, 5 years, something of that sort. And so you're going to have these kinds of different compliance areas. Now, the other aspect to look at that's very important as a business moving forward is the concept of the splinter net. You can look it up online. You can go to my page on YouTube. I did a video on it. And it's the idea that the utopian view of the internet as this one giant platform is wrong. And that's going to be broken up. And it's primarily going to be broken up through regulatory and legal efforts by countries and groups, such as the European Union. And we are seeing that now. So when the GDPR, for instance, was enacted in the EU, a person sitting in the EU, if they tried to pull up the Los Angeles Times newspaper, they couldn't see it because the business model used by the Times and many other newspapers to generate revenues online couldn't pass the GDPR regulations because it was heavy use of cookies and beacons. And so they just chose to block the EU. You as a business owner are going to have to look at your sales and your projections And you're going to have to know that those numbers inside and out. And just as importantly, you're going to have to know where they're generated from. If you are a U.S.-based business and you're marketing to the U.S. And you're getting 3% of your sales out of the EU, just kind of indirectly, well, do you want to spend 15 to 20 grand complying with the GDPR and facing all the potential threats there, or do you just want to block that traffic? It's going to be a question you're going to have to undertake. Now, what if you're looking at your numbers and you realize, wow, this is weird. I'm getting 15% of my sales from Brazil. Well, then you're going to need to go comply with the recently passed Brazilian national privacy law. And I bet 99% of the people watching this video have never even heard of the Brazilian national privacy law. it's something new that's out there. And so there's going to be a lot of tactical decisions that are going to have to be made in relation to the traffic that you generate, where you're going to comply with these laws, how you're going to comply. Can you get insurance to comply? Should you maybe open a different business entity in another region that would be responsible for complying and running a site in that region, a mirror site of some sort? So there are going to be a lot of these issues. So you need to educate yourself. You need to be thinking ahead and looking at these and getting a feel for what's coming and how it's going to impact your business, because things are coming. We're seeing the copyright directive in the EU, the GDPR. We have another email law essentially coming. It's called the e-privacy directive. That's going to materially affect how email works in the EU. Again, South America, we're seeing new laws, Asia, new laws. The US, we're going to probably see a US national privacy law. So the world is a-changing, and you need to be changing with it. And if you stay ahead of the game, you're going to have an advantage over your competitors. And ultimately, that means more market share and more money in your pocket. So anyways, that's it for the evolution of internet law. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to contact me. Otherwise, thanks for watching.